Shortall. 10 minutes.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I want to move my amendment. The amendment says to insert the following after the Commission of Care. Further calls on the Government to act on recommendation 2 of the final report of the Oireachtas Special Committee on COVID-19 response by carrying out a review into the impact of nursing home privatisation and urgently bring forward legislation to provide for a statutory right to home care. That's from the Social Democrats. So, look, I welcome this debate this evening. It's long past time that we had a debate on care of older people. And while I recognise that this is a short enough debate, we do need to have a much more extensive one. And let's stress that to both ministers. And not only is that about, people providing services and people in here, but it should also fundamentally entail hearing from older people themselves and their advocates in terms of what they want. And I'd like to see a proper debate taking place with organisations like SAGE and Age Action and the Senior Citizens Parliament being involved, because they have a lot to say on behalf of their members and on behalf of older people in relation to what older people themselves want. So we need to stop talking about what we think older people want and listen to what older people want themselves, and design those kind of services that are in their best interests. So I'd say that there is no denying that many nursing homes are in serious financial difficulty. And we know that in the last 3 years alone, 31 private and voluntary nursing homes closed, representing the loss of 915 beds in total. For many years, there have been calls for reform of the fair deal pricing mechanism, and clearly that is now needed given inflationary pressures. However, the aim of any such reform must be to improve facilities and make them more patient-centred, and to ensure that workers are paid a living wage, and to address the challenges faced by small nursing homes in particular, not the big chains. The financial difficulties facing small nursing homes and large operators should not be conflated, because we know that the latter is still viewed as a lucrative investment opportunity, especially for overseas operators and investors. And I note the comments that the Minister made in that regard. In recent years, we've seen a significant consolidation of nursing homes, with 15 operators now controlling almost 40% of private nursing homes and controlling almost 50% of all nursing home beds. Only 7 of the top 15 are Irish-owned, 4 are French-owned, while the rest are owned by German, Spanish, Dutch and Chinese operators. A CBRE report into the Irish nursing home market found that there were 18 nursing home deals last year worth €440 million. This was the second strongest year after 2021, when there were 25 deals worth around €600 million. Although activity is expected to drop to 14 deals this year, the CBRE director told the Business Post that she expects continued investor interest in this sector. Clearly from these figures, large nursing homes are still a very attractive investment opportunity despite inflation. That's why any reform of fair deal must not fall into the trap of incentivising or encouraging the larger nursing home model. The problems with accommodating older people in these large congregated settings were laid bare during COVID, and we were told that lessons would be learned. For example, on the 14th of May 2020, the Taoiseach said, and I quote, "We need to consider alternatives, for example, more and better home care." He went on to say that we needed, quote, "to consider a move away from large, modern, newly built 150 to 200 bed single-room nursing homes towards smaller units, as we have done in the disability sector." End of quote. But the Taoiseach wasn't alone in this sentiment. A month earlier, the then Minister for Health, Simon Harris, said in response to issues that I raised, quote, "At the outset, I just want to say that we will need to have a very serious conversation about the way we care for older people at the end of this pandemic. The Deputy is 100% correct that the current model is not fit for purpose." Yet here we are, 3 years on, with a further 16 medium to large nursing homes under construction, including a 146-bed in Clondalkin and a 151-bed in Portmarnock. What happened to alternative models of elder care, Minister? Why has this government continued with an arm's-length approach? How are we still in a situation where elder care is viewed as a business opportunity, best left to the private market? The Special Committee on COVID-19 response recommended a review into the impact of nursing home privatisation, but there has been no movement at all on that. That report was published in October 2020, almost 3 years ago. In February, at the Health Committee, I raised this issue with the Secretary-General of the Department of Health in relation to both that committee's report and also the report of the expert group. And I have to say he wasn't aware of the recommendations. So I just wonder, has anything at all happened in the Department of Health in terms of learning lessons from the appalling experience during the pandemic? And also, if anybody in there is listening to what is being recommended in terms of new models of care. Clearly, all of the talk of doing things differently post-pandemic was just that, it was just talk. If we are to fundamentally change the way we care for older people and support them in their own self-care, then we need to resource and expand alternatives to nursing homes, such as home care in particular. In 2018, a statutory right to home care was first promised by government, with 2021 identified for the delivery date. Here we are now, 5 years later, and there is still no statutory scheme or even regulations. What's the hold-up, Minister? I raise this with you on a regular basis, and there never seems to be any progress. Another aspect of elder care policy, which has been entirely sidelined by successive governments, is proper accommodation, housing, sheltered housing for older people. We know that most older people wish to stay in their own community. However, there often comes a point when their homes are no longer suitable for their needs. In these instances, people should have the choice to downsize, but there is rarely an alternative option in most communities. However, to address this, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are 2 existing local authority schemes which have been underutilised since the economic crash and should be scaled back up. The first of these is for older people who are local authority tenants who want to surrender larger accommodation and move into purpose-built older people's accommodation that's accessible, that is properly insulated and that is in a group setting, but allows them to maintain a high level of independence themselves. Another scheme which was used very successfully was the financial contribution scheme, where an older person could sell back their home to a local authority and in exchange be able to rent one of the new purpose-built, high-quality senior citizen units. Both of these schemes were extremely successful. We used them extensively in the northwest area of Dublin, and you could fill them many, many times over. It's also worth looking, for example, at the model that the Ivy Trust have, where they have really good quality group sheltered housing schemes, and they employ nurses then to come in and to check on the needs of residents on a regular basis. And that is an ideal kind of setup. We need local authorities, ministers, We need local authorities and the HSE working together to provide that kind of range of choice for people. We know that staying in their own home with supports is what older people want themselves. We know that's how we get the best health outcomes. We have the fastest ageing population in Europe, and we need to prepare for that. But we need to prepare for it in a way that addresses what older people themselves want to do and what's in their best interest. And we should know what that is at this stage.
Thank you, Deputy Shortall. Next we have